chirp.
Welcome to How to Break Into Storyboarding. I'm not going to say sharing the stage, but I'm moderating a stage full of some of the greatest storyboard artists in the world, a couple of bona fide legends. So right out of the gate, I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves, going that way.
Okay.
So.
Hi, my name is Cian. Nice to see you. Everybody's just like, whoo, like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. I'm a live-action storyboard artist, hired pencil assassin. And yeah, next to me is the famous.
Can everyone hear me? Hello there, I'm John Lennon. Beatles. Hello there, I'm Warren Drummond. I'm a live-action storyboard artist. And there you go. I've been in business since you were kids, or not born at all.
I'm Aaron Sud. I'm also live-action storyboard artist. I teach a class at Schoolism, like a beginner, intermediate storyboarding class. And these are some of my best friends and some new friends, and it's really cool just to be here with you guys. So thanks everybody for coming out.
Okay.
I'm Doug Leffler, and we're all storyboard artists, so I don't need to say that. But, and I've had the pleasure of working with a number of these people, but there's some people here that I haven't had a chance to meet in person, so this is great.
My name is Joel Vinci, and I'm just happy to be here.
My name is Phil Langone. Hello. I'm just going to say what he said. I was going to steal his notes. I saw his notes earlier, and I said, I'm just going to say whatever you said. So.
And my name's Jeff Henderson. I'm also a live-action storyboard artist, which must come as a surprise at this point. So the first question out of the gate is, again, we can, I guess, follow the same order. Don't want to break the continuity. But tell them a little bit about how you got in and maybe what your favorite project is that you've worked on so far.
Okay, how I got in. I got in by accident. So this wasn't my trajectory. I wasn't trying to be a storyboard artist. Prior to this, I was just an arts educator, more on the administrative side. I still am an arts educator at UH and CSULB, but I had an ovarian tumor, like growing like the size of a softball that was about to just like kaboom.
Damn.
And I crossed my fingers, everything went well, it was great, but that was a turning point for me, and I started this group called Ladies Adventure Club, and in doing the drawing for this fun little club that I had running around with a bunch of ladies in LA being wild, I was making artwork for it. Someone in my group saw my artwork and saw that I was really good at drawing. They asked if I'd want to do a tattoo for Danny Trejo, so do a little machete on machete.
Wow, that's cool.
And so I got that gig, and when that happened, someone else saw that work and was like, hey, does she storyboard? And of course, I absolutely said, yes, I do.
Because you always say yes.
Yeah, you always say yes. And getting an opportunity to show someone a storyboarding portfolio after just like knocking it out of the park over a weekend. I had an interview on a Monday, and I was hired on the spot to start working on ancillary projects for...
That's like a supervillain origin story.
Yeah, well, I mean, it got me working on It, and I built up a horror portfolio, and that got me my first feature gig working on Doctor Strange 2. So...
There you go.
There you go.
Warren?
How I got started? Blackmail. No, I started as a black male. So I wanted to be a comic book artist and a screenwriter. So I was pulled between comic book art and film. And after graduating from college, it took me years to find some little freelance work, and then I found, storyboards by looking at the Art of Star Wars book. And I did a free work for a short film. Those samples got me work on a movie called The Drop Squad. Drop Squad got me above the rim, and then I got bigger and bigger movies. And then it was work with John Singleton that my career really picked up. And I moved from New York to LA, and here I am. It's been a journey.
Aaron?
Nice. My origin story is I grew up on a farm in Ohio, kind of like Amish country adjacent. And my sister and I were both homeschooled, and my parents didn't want us to have a TV. So as a result, I drew all the time. I discovered comic books at a young age, and my dream was to be a comic book artist, which I did when I was 17 or 18. I drew my first comic the Elvis Presley experience. And then I moved into like Marvel and DC. I was an inker at Top Cow and an inker for DC and Marvel, some X-Men stuff, and the first appearance of Harley Quinn. Then I went into advertising, and advertising was really fun. And I was able to transition from advertising to getting into like, because there's two different rosters in the union. So the first one is like the commercial roster. So I went from commercials after I got enough hours, and then I finally got enough experience on, I think it was Josh Trank's Fantastic Four, which we all know about that, but there's a new one coming out. And then I was working on that TV show, Fear the Walking Dead, down in Mexico, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And I love drawing. It's kind of my dream. I didn't know you could get paid to do it. And so it was just kind of like perfect timing for me, you know, moving to LA because of Top Cow, Mark Silvestri, and then now being here and, you know, doing all this.
Mr. Leffler?
Well, I started a very long time ago. I was hired out of art school to go work at Disney. So I started in animation. That was 1976. So the year Star Wars came out, and they hired 4 of us out of that program. And the 4 were a guy named Jerry Reese, John Musker, Brad Bird, and myself. Tim Burton was in the class right behind us. John Lasseter, who created Pixar, was one of our classmates. And we were in the, Disney had started this character animation program at California Institute of the Arts, and we were the first students in there. So we were also from the first ones hired at the studio. So I worked in animation. I never intended to be in animation, though I always wanted to be in live action. So I worked from being an assistant animator into the story department, and I was there for a couple of years. Worked on Fox and the Hound, worked on The Black Cauldron, and then I left basically to try to find a way to work into live action. I didn't think I could do it by storyboarding because I was warned not to do it, that was a dead-end job. So I was pursuing writing and illustrating, and eventually somebody offered me a storyboard job, and I was broke, and so I took it, and it turned out to be a great thing. I was told it was going to be a dead-end job, but it actually has led to a lot of other things, like screenwriting and directing and occasionally producing.
Yeah.
Mr. Venti?
Like many of you guys, probably all were, you know, artists and drew all the time. I mean, I had every class when I probably should have been listening, I was drawing. It's okay, worked out fine for me. But went to Long Beach State. One day, a storyboard artist who worked in the industry came and gave a presentation. I was Dave Lowry, and all of a sudden, like that dolly zoom shot in Jaws, like I was zeroed in. I knew that's exactly what I wanted to do. Didn't know that it could be a job. You go through the process of trying to get into the union, which is kind of zero fun, but once you pay your dues and kind of play the game long enough, the opportunity will present itself, and you work on movies that people probably don't want to work on, but you just learn and learn and learn, and at some point, you get to work on films that you're kind of proud of, work with people you love to work with, and look, you get, for a guy who loves to draw and loves movies, it's great, and I hope that you guys have the same opportunity that we did in the future going forward.
Phil?
Yeah, I started in '96 on at Warner Brothers, which was just right down the street in Glendale. That's where they did Space Jam and Iron Giant, so I got to work on that. And then I ended up over on The Simpsons for a couple of years, and then my career kind of went when there was the changeover from animation to digital animation, hand-drawn to digital. So I ended up in Ireland for a couple of years doing commercials and short films. And then I came back because I got a job on Family Guy, so I ended up doing storyboards on that for a few seasons. And then I took a UCLA Extension screenwriting course, and I met a woman there that she didn't tell me who she worked for. And then a little while later, after the class was done, she called me and said, hey, the person I work for needs a storyboard artist. Do you want to work on this thing? So it ended up being this movie called Crazy on the Outside by Tim Allen. It was his film that he was self-funding. So that's what actually got me into the Guild, was that film. So, and then from there I went back into animation for a couple of years on a movie called Freebirds. So I got to animate, or storyboard on a feature animated film for the first time, which was fun. So my career has been kind of varied. It's kind of been all over the place. And then I got on Jungle Book, and from Jungle Book, my live action career kind of took off. And I've kind of go back and forth between animation, especially this last year. This last year was really bad for everybody. So I was able to do some animation stuff and pick up little jobs here and there. But so I'm able to go back and forth sometimes. And it takes us up to here. So that's what I've been doing.
And I grew up, my dad was in advertising in New York, and I love my dad, but he wasn't a great dad. But he was a brilliant guy. And because he had his own ad agency, he used to have a bullpen of storyboard artists. So I was like 10, 11 years old up for a visitation, and like he'd leave and leave me with the storyboard guys. And I loved comics, so they'd be like, all right, kid, it's just like drawing Spider-Man, but it's a guy with a Pepsi, go. And by like the end of high school, I did like $250,000 worth of free work for my dad's company. But to be fair, I learned a tremendous amount. It was invaluable. And to me, one of the greatest things about what we all do is it's like getting paid to go to film school, particularly when you work on live action stuff, because the proximity that you have with live action directors, and you occupy a very specific space where people forget in a film production, we're the only people with the word story in our job title. So like drawing is more the means to that end. The discipline is really storytelling first, and then drawing's more the means to achieve that. But yeah, it's really cool. And one of the things you'll hear over and over again from everybody is, I loved comic books. I wanted to draw comic books, and then eventually you kind of gravitate towards this. So keeping that in mind, let's change the order up a little bit. Doug, I'm gonna go to you because Doug's like the wisest man I've ever met. But you have some amazing advice on, let's get to giving people some advice. Like if you wanna do this, how do you break in? How do you transition to being a storyboard artist and coming from where these guys are coming from? And
Well, I'm curious, it's like the people in this room, how many of you are into comics or draw comics? And how many of you are into animation? And there's some overlap there. Storyboarding, one of the wonderful things about storyboarding, and one of the terrible things, is that nobody really understands exactly what we do. There's 3 disciplines to storyboarding. There's drawing, filmmaking, and storytelling. And everybody up here who does this, or everybody who does it professionally, has to be able to do all 3 of those. But we all naturally gravitate to one or the other. One of the things that's interesting about storyboarding, and I guess it's true maybe in all industries, is that the skill of getting the job is different than the skill of doing the job.
Right.
I know, like when you audition actors, it's like the art of auditioning for a part is very different than the art of creating a role. And when you're a director, you have to understand that, because you may pass over to somebody that's going to be a great person for that. And in the case of storyboarding, ostensibly what we do is we draw pictures, we draw shots. From the outside, I'm sure a lot of people assume that we work with the director and with the script, and we get our inspiration, we get our instructions from the director and our inspiration from the script. But everybody up here will tell you stories about how they were thrown into a scene, and just, as you were telling me before we started here, we just have kind of a vague idea, or we can't follow the script, that we kind of know it's going to start here and end here, go. And you have to be able to be a screenwriter, a film director, and an illustrator. But the point here is that being able to draw pretty pictures is the important thing you need to be able to do to get the job. It's less important once you start doing it. What's much more important is being able to draw something very clear and succinct. And if you can do that in a very simple way, and think of each drawing as like a word in a sentence, and each sentence is part of a paragraph to tell a story. So the skills necessary to do this job are really, you need to be able to think visually and linearly at the same time. Not everybody can do that, obviously.
And I've heard you say before that with that, because it's a specific group of skills put together, but none of them are, like, it's non-negotiable. You have to be able to do all of them to be successful.
You have to be able to do.
You can't have a blank spot, because ultimately you're gonna not be able to do it.
And but like I said, you will naturally gravitate to one of those 3. And in knowing that, then you have to kind of work backwards then to fill in the other areas. So if you really love to draw, then you have to understand you have to work on storytelling and filmmaking. Or if you really, if you are screenwriters, and a number of people here mentioned they started doing that, and you're thinking in terms of linear storytelling, then you need to learn the language of cinema. One of the things that I'd like to drill into people is that our job as a storyboard artist is not to illustrate the script, it's to translate the script. We are translating it from a written language or a verbal pitch into a visual language.
And then to add to what Doug's saying is there's some practical things that I wish I would have known earlier because it just takes you a while to kind of figure stuff out. To draw a frame within 15 to 20 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but maybe that's all the time you're going to have. If you have to do 20 to 40 frames a day, you have to come up with a style that allows you to do it in that speed, which sometimes, doesn't necessarily mean the stuff that there took 20 minutes, but if you don't do it in 20 minutes, your day is going to be a lot harder and a lot longer than it needs to be. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I would suggest is try to figure out, time yourself. How long does it take you to do from rough to finish in 20 minutes? Can you do a frame in that time? If you can, do it, make it 10. Try to go as fast as you can because it'll help you in the long run. And the language thing about film language is also really important. It's a lot of manipulation and emotion and information. Those are the three things that I think of when I think of storyboards is what's the information on the frame, what kind of emotion you try to convey, and can you make it an emotional response? So like if you've watched films like Ex Machina or Collateral, there's a lot of positioning of the camera that dictates power in Ex Machina, for example.
Specificity of it. It's very specific.
Yeah, and earlier on in the film when the robot is being looked at as like something small. The camera's always high angle, she looks small in frame, the overs are always heavy, and then as the power dynamic shifts within the film, it's all low angles, she's the one who's in charge. There's little tiny conversations about what the shot means that can influence how you storyboard. If you know the language of filming, and different lenses can also create different effects. Those kinds of things are really important as a storyboard artist to have.
Anybody else? Tips, advice?
I don't really think in terms of certain things that emotionally when I do my boards, especially when I start my boards. If I'll read the script, I'll have a sequence and I'll think, oh, this is the part I want to draw the most, and I'll jump into that, and I'll start storyboarding or I'll thumbnailing. Actually, I don't even thumbnail that often anymore. Now what I do is I tend to shot list everything first, and then I pick certain shots that I like, that I think are really interesting or fun, and then or things that I really like to draw is like scale and anything with lots of diagonals and all that. So I'll or if it's like I just worked on Final Destination 6 a few weeks ago. I got to work on that for a few weeks, and I got to do these scenes. The horror stuff is really fun to work on because you get to really. I love drawing like nasty drawings, like gross stuff sometimes. So I'll jump into that stuff because it's so emotional. It's like somebody dying or something. So I know that sounds really dark, and that's my Italian side. And
Don't blame the Italians.
It's weird working on something with the word final that has a 6 at the end, too.
Right.
It's like Final Fantasy 38.5. It's like, dude, how many times can it be the Final Fantasy? I don't know.
yeah,
Apparently 6.
and there'll probably be 7 and 8. Yeah. But so I tend to work that way, and then sometimes I'll work backwards. I have all sorts of different ways that I work depending on what I'm doing. So it's hard for me. I have like multiple ways of doing things. I'm not really. It's hard to pin me down sometimes.
That's all right.
I think for film work, I always focus on, like I don't shot list. I'll just read the script. So if there is a shot list, great. But if I'm on my own, I just see things in pictures, and I just think of how does one shot flow into the next.
Like beat to beat.
It's got to be, like I'm a big Spielberg guy, particularly the early years. And just look at Jaws, just look at how every shot moves into the next, and how he can have a wide angle shot, and if people go into the camera lens, you go from wide angle to a 3 shot, to a 2 shot, and then people walk away, and it's a wide shot.
And his choices are perfect.
Without perfect, absolutely perfect. If you kids are like, Steve, look at this guy, Steven Spielberg. He's got this big future in the industry. But look at the early stuff. Look at Jaws. If you've seen it, just watch it. If you're good at storytelling for storyboards, if I can show someone my storyboards and they can tell what's going on without descriptions, that's perfect. I've done my job. But really, just watch certain masters and just turn the sound off and look at how they go shot by shot.
Can I add to that real quick?
No, go.
So I was teaching my class a few months ago, and we were watching, I have this one class during my 10-week course where we just watch all these different Wyatt Earp movies, because I like to show the students like how you can take the same subject matter and you get 10 different directors will do it 10 different ways. And depending on the decade and the technology that they're using in that decade, it'll all change and look different. But one of the things I was showing My Darling Clementine, one of the things I really noticed watching that was the way in a black and white film, those old black and white films, because they didn't have color to rely on and not even always great sound or anything, they were still kind of coming from a purely visual standpoint. So everything was like these beautiful silhouettes, of these characters on these certain kinds of backgrounds, and they would, their mastery of tones was so good. And then you get into the 70s, and some of that got lost a little bit, because some of the movies you'll watch, they're kind of like washed out looking, and the silhouettes aren't as strong or whatever. And but when you watch those old black and white movies, sorry? Oh, somebody said something? Oh, okay. When you watch those old black and white movies, you can really see how they would sort of think, tonally, and like I said, those beautiful silhouettes. It's a great way to learn composition.
There's a great example of the opening of Raiders of the Lost Ark that I think Soderbergh made a black and white version of it. You guys should check it out, and you can just see the shapes and it's like an Alex Toth drawing. It's just very shape-driven, very black and white, like a film noir style. But that's exactly what we're talking
Well, Spielberg is great at silhouetting. Yeah,
But
he'll even use shadows. And he's always using
Yep,
shadows.
he's a great film noir, modern film noir.
There's a scene that we were watching in the third Raiders, where Sean Connery and him are tied up in that room with the Nazi.
Yes.
And there's a shot where you have the Nazi officer with the girl, and you see Indy. He's in the frame too, so it's a 3-shot, but he's in the frame as a shadow. It's just his shadow on the frame. And it's such a cool shot, and you're like, that's why when we say Spielberg, like if you watch all of his stuff is unbelievable. Like people forget how great his compositions and how mastered everything. It's just amazing. There's a guy on TikTok right now that's breaking down his films, and he'll break them down, and you're like, wow, I didn't even notice that. Like,
Who needs film school anymore?
oh yeah.
Well, that's
He'll
what I was
show
going
like
to say is to piggyback off what both you guys are saying, which is excellent advice. My advice would just be to diversify, because I've always felt like I was a jack of all trades but master of none.
which is the classic storyboard artist.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. But it kept me working through lean times. I mean, it's getting worse now, but if I wasn't working on a feature film, I'd work on a TV show. I've worked in comics. I went from comics to advertising, commercials, music videos, back when we used to do music videos. And it's great because it was like getting paid to go to art school. When I was poor, I couldn't afford Art Center. I ended up teaching at Art Center for 6 or 7 years, which is great. But it really was, for me, it was how I was learning, and I would just try to be a sponge and collaborate with my fellow storyboard artists or the directors, because every director is going to be slightly different. Every show is going to be slightly different. Sometimes you're doing an animatic. Sometimes you're doing static images. But I worked on the Simpsons ride at Universal. I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but that's still there, I think. There's the Transformers ride that I worked on. So I did a lot of theme park stuff. What else? Trading cards. Just the more things you can do, the more employable you'll be.
All the weird Indian Bollywood stuff we did together. Back before we were stripping. Just kidding.
I think I want to.
It wasn't before then.
I just wanted to add, we've been talking about what we need to do to be really successful, to be a storyboard artist. I wanted to add also that yes, we are storyboard artists, but we also are a part of a team. and on a production. We have to totally play well with others.
Yes.
So not only am I trying to draw really well and draw really well fast, I also know that a big part of the job is interfacing with a bunch of people who are non-artists, and again, like, who don't know the job.
Yeah.
And so if there's a project that I'm getting on, like, for sure, like, before I even get started, I'm doing my homework on the director, on the cinematographer, on the writer, watching everything I can, trying to find the dead bodies where they're hiding. Like, do they have locations? Where's the art department? Who's the talent? Can I come to a tech scout, you know? And also just getting ahead of the game as far as what the director's needs might be, and just sometimes I gotta be doing the shot list. Sometimes I gotta be directing for them. Sometimes I have to just, you know, be an extra set of ears, or sometimes a therapist. But I'm just there to be easy and bring joy and make everybody's lives easier and be like 10 steps ahead.
Yes.
Well, Sam brings up a really great point. Is one of the things about getting into this, and I'm sure everyone would agree with me to some point, that the amorphous part of it, the part you can't learn out of a book, is only through experience, and that is a lot of the cliches about people in Hollywood are cliches for very good reason. And it can be very difficult to navigate. So, like, you can be the best artist in the world, you can be a great storyteller, you can be the coolest person in the world, but sometimes you're going to run up against something that has nothing to do with any of that. That's going to be very difficult. And you got to navigate it, or you lose your job. You got to figure out a way to get through it. And a couple really quick bullet points. There's an old cliche about you want it fast, cheap, or good, pick two. So to Joel's point, learning to draw not just well and to have a command of the skill set's important, but you got to be able to do it really fast. You have to. It's non-negotiable. That's why stuff with storyboards looks much more gestural and much more unfinished and loose, because you're doing 70 frames a day, man. Like, there's no time to get precious. Like, that's why I loved comics, but I gravitated away from comics largely because I'm just not that anal retentive as a personality. Like, if I'm gonna spend 18 hours drawing something, it ain't gonna be every hair on Wolverine's arm. I'd jump out a window. So I think the variety of doing all that stuff. And then the other thing, which I think both Phil and Doug were talking about, is really study cinema. Even movies that are cliche, even movies you've seen 1,000 times, look at it through the lens of breaking it down from a technical standpoint. Like, because it's just like songs. Like, if you're a songwriter, you can hear a song 1,000 times, but then if you start thinking of really paying attention to the structure and the build and this and that, it's a completely different way of looking at it. And the third thing I would say, just from my own personal experience, if you want to do this, something that's tremendously helpful is take some acting classes. And I'm not suggesting living out some Christopher Walken fantasy. I just mean understanding the process by which people in a different discipline convey emotion and convey story, and being able to communicate those things is important even in 2D, even as a storyboard artist, because there's a lot of stuff you're doing talking heads, you're doing coverage of people talking, you're trying to convey emotional beats. Well, if all you can do is draw that, you know, if you sit down with a piece of paper and I'm looking at my watch, I'm like, okay, you got 10 minutes. Give me an old guy in New York in 1950s mourning the death of his wife in one frame. Wait, what? And that's the demands of it. And I'm not saying it to be intimidating. It's just, but we come back to this over and over again. It's an amalgam of a lot of different things, and none of them are really negotiable. But it can be wonderful. It really can be wonderful. So to that end, okay, I'm going to go in order because this is where it starts getting weird. How do you guys promote yourselves in terms of, you know, because storyboarding, you're part of a production, it's kind of a singular thing. And like, do you use social media? Is it all, I mean, all of us do refer each other for gigs, but I'm saying, you know, just personally, like anyone who wants to jump in, like, how do you promote yourself? How do you sustain what you're doing in this environment where everything's freelance and everything's kind of up in the air and nothing's solvent? And... No,
Well,
nothing?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Warren.
I'll just say, well, I was in the business for decades, when my wife said, we're going to do a book on your career, and I'm going to publish it. Because she had published children's books. That's a great book, too. So I said, okay, right. And then how do you do it? I did not try to do a how-to book. or how-to books out there. But the point of the book was to have what were my experiences as a storyboard artist. Who are the people that I worked with? John Singleton, Denzel Washington when he directs, Ron Howard, and all these people. And I wrote a book, and it's this book here, which is called A Hard Day's Work. And
If you want a
It's a good book.
storyboard, I can't recommend this book enough.
and you can order it. The website is, besides Amazon, you want a signed copy, dreamim.com. You can order it directly, and I'll sign it however you want it, and I'll send it out. And Stewart Eng Books here, they have it. They're carrying it here. Stewart Eng Books in booth 122. So they have it here. So you want to buy it, you can get it, but you have to promote yourself by Instagram, Facebook, however, but you got to sell yourself, and you have to make sure people know who you are. And get a website, which I'm rebuilding my website. They have fantastic sites. I'm still rebuilding mine.
Yeah, but you got the book.
I do have a book.
You can't hold
In a big mouth.
You can't hold a website.
You can't hold the website, yeah. Plus a grudge, yeah, but you know.
Well, I love what Cien was saying because that's great advice. So just to take it one step further, I think that at the end of the day, it's all about relationships, right? I mean, a lot of things in life are, but especially in the film industry. And so you work with a production designer or a director or a DP or a VFX supervisor, you're making these contacts, and a lot of times they're like, they're going to call you. You're going to be the first call they make or the first email they send on their next show. So I really try to, meet as many people. Like when I was on set, I missed being on set. When I was on Fear the Walking Dead, I went around to every department and made friends with the department heads and asked them, like, what can I do? Because the storyboard artists before me had just gotten fired for not turning in work that they could use. And so I was like really nervous because it was in Mexico, 90% Mexican crew. And I was like, one of the, here's this American guy coming down to take a Mexican job. And I was like, okay, this is gonna be bad. But it ended up really well. And I worked on it for 25 seasons, or 25 episodes. I mean, they do a ton of episodes.
Wow.
So whenever you can do things like that, I mean, you just want to make yourself valuable. Like, how can you be of service?
Meet
to other
people.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly. And then also, when I was younger, I always thought like your peers were your competition. So I'm really intimidated to see, the work of these guys because I can't draw that well. But
Don't believe them.
Yeah.
but when you make those contacts, those are going to carry you through the tough times. And because I always thought your peers were your competition, but it's quite the opposite. Because when I first broke in with Famous Frames, having an agent, they take 25%. And I learned doing commercials, but at the end of the day, I've gotten way more work from all these people, all my friends, all my peers.
Yep.
If Warren can't do a job, he's like, hey, call my buddy Aaron. And if I can't do a job, vice versa. So
We do it all the time.
Yeah.
And we've saved each other. There have been some people in the family who have been, without a job for a long time. And it's happened that I've been on a job, got a call, and I can't take the job. I'll say, oh, who needs a job? And that's happened to me, where I was out there going like, okay, I'm gonna go back to the streets. Not from the streets, but anyway, not being black. But anyway, we help each other. We only compete as far as a job can only have so many artists, but we're all there for each other. That's the difference between what we do, let's say being an actor, we do compete as an actor. With us, we're a family, we help each other all the time.
I was gonna say that I'm so glad to be a part of this team and a bunch of these guys, but I didn't have a community because I started out like just off the street, someone just saw my work and was like, hey, like that girl's artwork on social media looks really good. But I started out very, just as like putting myself out there, going to mixers and going to things of like, it sounds so painful, but you just never know who you're going to meet. So I didn't have breaking into a production and meeting all these people or, and getting referrals that way. But I started out making connections and putting myself out there, but giving myself a place and an online presence for someone to find me, because there are people who don't have social media. So like obviously having an email, a phone, website, like some people who find me for jobs are texting me or calling me. But having some place, even if it's Instagram or something, somewhere someone can find you, and then navigating that back to where you want to be connected to, like via your website, et cetera. But the other thing about this too is like as far as the community, we are a really small niche community. In the union, we only have about 100 or so storyboard artists, and then a baker's dozen of women identifying storyboard artists, and one of them happens to be Islander, me. So, I mean, it's come to the dark side. Like, join us.
Wow, what an endorsement.
I would like to just say too, we really need more women storyboard artists. There's a remarkably few in our industry. I'm not sure why.
I spy one over there.
Yes,
Bridget
so
Shaw, who just did Twisters.
Okay. There you go. Very talented artist. Just work together.
All right. So here's the big one. With AI, with downsizing, with all this nonsense that's going on, post-strike, post-COVID, what's the outlook for the next couple of years? How are you guys thinking ahead? What do you think? How are you preparing for the future? What do you see the future being? Everyone's got a different take. Anyone just jump in?
Can I?
Please,
Can I have a go at
please,
this?
Mr. Leffler.
So I hear an awful lot about AI and people being terrified of AI. My take on this is any producer who would say to me, will we just get AI to do this? I would say, please do, and let me know how that works for you.
We're dealing with that right now.
By the time AI can do what we do, AI will do everything else. And the world will be fundamentally changed.
Well, then it's Skynet, and we're all John Connor.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. If you think of this job just as filling up squares with pictures, then yeah, AI could do that. But again, this is much more, as Jeff, you started off in the beginning saying we have story in our title. I always thought of this much more as a process of writing. So by the time AI could actually do what we do and create an emotionally engaging sequence of images to tell a story and also convey how the filmmaker is going to follow that, AI will be able to do everything else. AI would be able to just make the film, and it wouldn't need us, it wouldn't need the actors. And before it replaces all of us in this room, it'll replace all the executives and all the lawyers.
Yay. To see that happen.
But I do think one of the things is important, and I do think it's kind of a wake-up call, is that we should use this time to develop our humanity, and I don't mean that in a touchy-feely way, but I think, and I should say, to develop our voice. Because I think that that's really important for all creative people. And for when you are telling stories, when you're telling stories visually, to develop learn how to be very specific, honest, and to speak in your own voice.
I just want to add to that too. I've learned a lot from Doug Leffler's. Anytime I have a chance to work with you, it's like, you bet, I'm in there. But the one thing that I remember you mentioned a lot that's always lasted with me is the power of the idea. And as artists, whether AI becomes a thing or not, we still have the ability to come up with an idea. And when we draw a frame, we don't know how that idea will grow or will take. I mean, this guy drew the upside down Spider-Man kiss. Didn't exist before him, now it's in the film. You have these opportunities to influence how a film turns out. So I challenge all of you guys, when you think about ideas, not just make random idea generation, because that's not going to help you, but take the time to understand, if we're talking about a film context, take time to understand the character, the story, the theme. Can you put together, and listen to the producers, the problems that they may be having in that production. Can you come up with an idea that solves all those problems and say, hey, here's a drawing that might solve that? That is something that is
And not
valuable.
get any credit for it.
Was that?
And not get any credit for it.
Oh, it never happens. Never happens. But that's not the job. I mean,
Can I just say something to encourage everybody here? On Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, the screenwriter of that film credited me and interviews that he did.
That's
for
great.
one of the sequences. When he was being asked about how did you come up with the idea for this, he said, I didn't. The storyboard artist Doug Leffler came up with that out of whole cloth.
So it can
awesome.
happen.
It can
Yeah.
happen, but I've been doing this a very long time. It's happened once, so. But it gives me hope.
Anybody else?
You know, I was,
Sorry, you're being too loud.
we're in an off, I'm sorry, we're in a quiet time right now. But it doesn't mean that things aren't being made and things aren't being bought because, like, you know, it takes a period of time for a film to go through its development, then production, then post-production phase, taking a couple years. Like, there's what's going to happen when the movies that didn't get made now are supposed to be released in a couple of years. So they're going to start they're not ramping up, but I was listening to a great podcast called Script Notes, and they were just talking about people in the industry are buying. And so, for instance, Netflix, they're in it for the long game because they're, you know, making movies and they want to be in the business. But for someone like Apple, they are doing it because they have money, but they also, you know, they sell cell phones. So like you know, everyone's trying to reconfigure out where they want to be in this space. So it doesn't mean we're going to be without content. So if we don't have things that are coming out in a couple of years, there's going to be a need for that, you know, for things to be pushed back, to be released later, or for projects to start ramping up so that we can have those things for when they need to start coming out when there's a bit of a dry.
Because all the streaming's become so ubiquitous,
Yeah.
so all those streaming
Yeah.
machines need to be fed.
Exactly,
You know?
exactly.
I mean, that's why Netflix in particular, if you guys have noticed, they've leaned so hard into documentary stuff and licensing stuff from Korea and, you know, India and outside the United States because one, it's a lot cheaper, which is always kind of what they lead with. And the second thing is like we've all touched on, it's a strange time, like post-COVID, post-strike, and all these lines kind of intersect at the same time. It's just a weird time. But there's always a weird time. There's always something. It's just, it's, you know, it's never a straight line. It's always like this. But to Doug's point, I was going to say something similar that aside from the obvious building your skill set and studying and learning all these things, which can seem daunting because it's so many things at once, develop your own ideas. I mean, write your own stuff, develop your own characters, develop your own scripts. Even if it takes you a while to get good enough to sell them or to realize them or to have them fully bloom the way you want them to, the process of chipping away and the process of developing is invaluable. You learn so much, whether anybody sees it or not, because ultimately, I think in one way or another, all of us aspire, you'd rather be the painter than the paint. So you spend a lot of time being someone else's. You're an instrument to realize other people's ideas, but what you don't want to do is commit to that to the point where you never realize any of your own.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I want to chime in
advantage-
about
Yeah.
the AI stuff. So I find AI, this whole discussion, after about a year of it now, I'm kind of exhausted mentally because I've debated people about it. And I find AI, like, I'm not convinced that people are going to accept fully AI movies in the future. I'm just not. We'll see. The AI stuff that I've seen is kind of goofy looking and obnoxious. And even my kids look at it and they're like, oh, it's weird. People can pick up on it. People's eyes will attune to it eventually that aren't attuned to it yet. And they'll start to really be able to pick it out and go, yeah, I don't want that. They won't know why exactly. It might make them feel weird or strange. But I'm not convinced. Now, I could be wrong because I've been wrong about so many things, especially in the last 5 years. But there's an executive right now at Lionsgate that's licensed his library for Lionsgate to Runway, the AI company, and they're going to train that AI on their library. And one of the specific things you mentioned was storyboard artists. Oh, we can cut storyboard artists out of this in the future. Well, Lionsgate's been making pretty bad movies for a while, and there's a reason why. Because when you have executives saying things like that, they're pulling that out of their ass. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what storyboard artists do.
imagine that.
Yeah.
There are good executives. There's an
There
art
are good
being-
executives.
to being an executive, but there are bad executives too.
And we've gone through a run now in the last few years of some bad ones.
Yeah,
And it happens.
the bad ones just get noticed a lot more. The good ones do their jobs.
You're right.
Work,
You're right.
Yeah.
But so when they say things like that, I just shake my head because I'm like, you don't know what you're doing. you don't know what you're talking about. So what a storyboard artist does is more than just drawing. You were saying it earlier. When you work with the director, you're kind of a collaborator. You're like a writer. You draw, you do all these things that they can't do. And when you present stuff to them, they're just like so happy because they can go to their producer and go, look what we did. And they can pitch it to the executives and save their job. And that's a really important part of the job, that somebody that's doing AI stuff isn't going to be able to do that because they probably haven't trained in storytelling. They probably haven't learned anything about screenwriting or acting or any of these things. Because if you're just training yourself to push a bunch of buttons and prompt a bunch of images, what else have you learned how to do? That's kind of the easiest part of the thing that you could do. And that's my take on AI, and I'm very opinionated about it, obviously. But I find it kind of to be a frustrating conversation, because I was just talking about it with somebody the other day who's not even in the business, and he has all these opinions about what it's going to be. Now, I can't predict. We were talking about where is the business going to be in 5 years. Who knows? Because 5 years ago, if you had told me what last year was going to be like, I wouldn't have predicted that.
5 years ago, everybody was talking about VR.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And before that, they were talking about, and they were changing over movie theaters to show 3D.
Right.
3D.
And where did that end up? We just went to see, my son and I here, we just went to see Nightmare Before Christmas at the El Capitan, and they handed out the 3D glasses. And as soon as they did that, I just thought, oh no. I didn't know this was going to be a 3D movie, because kids, for instance, they don't want to wear those glasses. He was pulling them off halfway through the movie. And they have the Apple goggles and all this stuff. And you're just going, my whole thing with the Apple goggles and any of this kind of stuff is, who goes to movies? Primarily, historically, in the last 30, 40 years, have been younger people. People in high school, people in their 20s. They go on dates. They're in the middle of the movie, and they look at each other, they go in for a kiss or something, and they got these stupid glasses on.
Take your glasses off, Joel.
Did you want to move?
You had no idea when you came to this, did you? But,
Did you want to move into?
so for me, like, sometimes it's all about the practicality of things,
Should we go to Q&A?
Yes, we should. I didn't want to interrupt anybody. Does anybody have any questions? Because we got about 10 minutes. Yes?
Since we are recording this panel, if you want to ask a question, could we have them line up here and directly ask it with our microphone?
I guess if you want to ask a question, please line up on the line.
Well, by the way, the advantage that young people have, you all grew up on TikTok. For us, a lot of, at least, my age range, it's a foreign thing, but you all you're growing up where all the technology is. So
It's a big learning.
try to use it, yes.
Yeah. Hey.
Hi, thank you. I'm Kevin Yin. Nice to meet you guys. Thank you
Hello.
for coming.
Hi.
Hi. My question is, with your obvious skill set in visual and narrative storytelling, and and the significant role you play in all of your sets, do you guys feel like at your point in your careers, that you've built enough leverage to be confident in pursuing your own project, like if you wanted to direct, or if you wanted to, expand upon your role, because you clearly have all the tools and the thinking pathways? I guess I'm asking more so in terms of like your connections and your mobility in terms of your industry.
As a matter of fact, my wife told me the reason why she'll get me to do things like the book, and I directed this short film a few years ago. Confidence, you got to have the confidence. So she helped me make myself go out to try to get a job directing and just do a short film. So my next job will be doing a short film. It could even be a 5-minute film, but you got to start to put yourself out there. Peter Ramsey, who's also part of the family, is now directing things like getting the Oscars for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and now he's a second unit director on the Mandalorian film. So there is a step after storyboards. That's if you want it.
You should chime in on that.
So yes, I did transition from storyboarding to directing. I storyboarded a film called Army of Darkness for Sam Raimi. I storyboarded the whole film, and then Sam let me be the second unit director on the film.
That's so cool.
And that segued into, I directed for about 15 years. And I've also been a screenwriter, a produced screenwriter. And at least on one occasion, I became a producer because of that. So it is a good stepping stone to other things.
So
And it's really good training also, just because you have to solve problems fast, be able to figure out filmmaking in your head.
I mean, there's also, there's also these other natural things to jump off to directing, such as these guys have done. And yeah, it's definitely I've gotten the bug. I want to direct, but it's also given me the opportunity to meet other people on production. Like I was Jennifer Garner's sketchbook for an Apple TV show. I ended up doing props on something, or doing scenic art or murals and things like that. But for production, so you could also jump in other parts of the art department.
A lot of it's just by virtue of being there. And do it short, right? It'll help a lot. It really does. It's a great question, man. Thank you. What's your name?
My name's Alex, and I'm currently a third-year animation student.
Nice. Please, what's your question?
So I was curious, what would you guys be doing right now, as students? I know it's a lot different from when you guys were in school, because a lot of stuff is more digital now, and you have to learn all these other kind of technologies and stuff. I was just what do you think is the best course to learn stuff as fast but still quality as possible, besides going to your class?
Are you talking about software? In terms of
No.
what software to use?
Oh no, I just
Okay.
meant how to develop your art style, or your shorthands and your stuff to a professional kind of looking level.
Aaron has a class.
I do, yeah. I teach at Schoolism. That's Bobby's school online. There's also another guy, Christopher, and I think, so I teach for live action, and he teaches for animation. And it's great because you can transition from one to the other, because some of the best people, these guys, start off in animation. And the great thing about that is you have it's so exaggerated and it's so fluid and dynamic that you can jump from one to the other. And I've done it a little bit, but I'm not, on the level of these guys. But, going to go to Cal Arts or something like that would be great. I used to teach at Art Center. But then Doug actually has a great channel on YouTube where he's giving out advice for free, a great series. So I would definitely check him out. Is it just your name, or is it Storyboard?
It's Storyboard.
Storyboard, yeah.
And
This is a
I
great
haven't made a
resource.
video for a while, though.
Yeah, he really has a great sequence, great series going.
I have a book.
And buy it at Stuart Dean.
It's right here. But they have online, and also look at people's sites at their Instagram and their websites. These people all have great websites where you can just go and look at frame by frame
Yeah.
at their work.
Yeah, find a style that you like, that you respond to, and then see how you do. And can you do it within 15, 20 minutes, and then find that, just grow from there.
So we're getting to the heart of your question. The thing that you could do now is that was kind of what you were asking. If we were students today, I'll just tell you the same thing that I was told, which is draw, draw, draw. All you do is draw. My son is trying to get faster playing hockey and doing all this stuff, and I saw this video with Cooper Kupp from the Rams, and he was doing this video on him running, and he said, "Oh, what can you do to get faster? Just run really fast. Just run all the time."
Do the thing.
They're there's nothing special about it. So that's the thing you can do. It doesn't cost any money. It just takes time.
Yeah.
And you already love to do it. So you just do it all the time. You go with the sketchbook everywhere you go. You watch lots of movies. I worked with Mark Andrews, who won that Oscar on Brave years ago. And one of the things his teachers told him was watch a movie a day. And then Quentin Tarantino talks about it too. Watch a movie for fun, and then the second time you watch
Study.
it, you turn the sound off. And you just watch it. And then when you turn the sound off, you really start to see stuff.
It changes things, yes.
Yeah. So those are the three things. Yeah. And draw everything.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We got time for one more really. That's okay. What's your name?
Calvin.
Calvin, what's your question, my friend?
Forgive me, I don't remember who said this, but you said making connections is very important now. And with the way the internet and social media has connected everybody a bit more, how do you think the best way to do that is, both with people who are in the profession and people who aren't?
You know, I was saying that I didn't have a community of people that I, was already connected to. I put myself out there in person because yes, you can see someone's portfolio online and you can see their social media, but getting to know who they are behind the scenes is so valuable because just spending time with somebody, you get to know who they are. Can you work well? Do they play well with others? Could you get along with them? You never know who you might be sitting next to right now. Might be someone who's gonna be on a project with you, could be hiring you for a project. I was just go to the person next to me and say, hey, what's up? Nice to meet you. Right. And that's all it takes because, I'm someone who's an introvert who likes to pretend to be an extrovert, but we're all here wanting to have a community, be a part of something and make some awesome shit, right? So the next person, that you might meet or the person sitting next to you might be that person you might be working with or could be working with. You just never know. And so building those in-person connections and relationships and just remembering that person like, oh my gosh, yeah, Jeff, awesome dude. Like first person I'm, gonna think of when I wanna hire on or one of these guys, right? So it's, you just never know who you're gonna meet, but also in building those in-person connections, I don't have to do so much work. I've now got referrals because we've connected, I know they're cool, we jive, and then, what was I gonna say? Well, I lost my train of thought. The fact is now the people that I work with now, they heard about me. I'm now someone they've referred to. I don't have to really or otherwise I'm also just reaching out. Like I reached out to Beck and Woods and I was like, I want to work on the next project with you. They were already busy with the storyboard artist and they were like, hey, we actually have a friend who's working on a feature. We love your work. Are you free to work with them? And it was just connecting with them and just talking with them and chatting them, talking shop about their stuff and got a gig just by saying, hey, you're cool.
Sorry, I would also suggest maybe less is more because a lot of times, I'm guilty of this. When you student work, when you're first starting out, you want to throw everything. Like you can draw all this stuff, but it also shows your limitations a lot of times too when you show too much. So maybe pick the things that you're most proud of or you think has the most resonance with other people and just give them a curated version of you.
Yeah.
Also tailor your portfolio to the job you want. So like if sometimes they want to tell you, they're like, are you available? And I'm like, sure, and what's the movie? We can't tell you. I'm like, well, can you tell me the genre? Is it sci-fi? Is it horror? And then I'll put together my samples according to that genre, which I think helps because they don't want to see like a rom-com if they're going to hire you to do, the next Nightmare on Elm Street or something.
Exactly, find the genre.
My first commercial job was a storyboard job in Ireland. And I put these little portfolios together because I just moved over there. So I had individual ones and I dropped it off at this place called Toy Town. And she called me up like a day later and she's like, oh, we have this commercial and I saw your portfolio on my desk. It was like pure timing and luck. I dropped it off, they put it on her desk and they had this commercial and she just called me up first. She didn't want to bother calling a bunch.
Which never would have happened had you not had the wherewithal to put it out there in the first place.
Right,
yeah.
So LightBox literally is here to do exactly the thing you're talking about. Like you're filled with people who want to connect.
Yeah, this is perfect.
Let's go. We'll go right now. We'll all go as a group. We'll walk through the show floor and we'll say, this is Calvin, he needs a job right now. Is that it? Are we out? We're out of time, huh?
All right, thank you.
Calvin, thank you, my friend.
Everybody.
Chuck, thank you so much, everybody.